Hi, this is David Davis, and I'm here at Scale Computing headquarters, and I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Craig Theriac. How you doing, Craig?
Doing well. How are you?
Great, great. So you're Director of Product Management for Scale, right?
That's correct.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks for joining me. I know we've been talking a little bit about, Scale Computing's architecture and differentiators, and in this segment, I wanted to focus in on, I think what is a common scenario. Someone's using VMware vSphere. They're interested in looking at scale computing and making that jump, and they have some common, frequently asked questions.
Great. I think that's a perfect topic for today.
Okay. So being a former VMware admin myself, if I was looking at scale computing, one of the things I learned about it today is the hypervisor that it runs on is KVM. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell me about the KVM hypervisor? What would I need to know as an admin? I've never used Linux before. KVM kind of scares me. Give me something that...
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it's not one we hear a lot from customers.
Okay.
Typically, our target customer views the hypervisor as a commodity. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is basically, does it do what I need it to do? Yes, then I don't care what the name is on it. Now, saying that, it does a lot, and what's cool about it is you don't necessarily have to have any training coming into it. We kind of design the system so that it's as simple to use as a single server. So if you can administer a single server, you should be able to administer an HC3 cluster. We hide all the complexity of the KVM hypervisor, and like I said, there's a lot of things that it really can do. Just out of the box, what you want as a VMware user, typically what you've done is you've set up a number of host servers, you've uploaded your hypervisor, you've kind of set up the switching that you need, put together either a SAN or a NAS, and kind of connected it all together. And the reason you do that is for the high availability that you want in your environment. So that way, if any of the hosts die, the other nodes in the cluster, or the other hosts there in your environment can kind of take over the workloads for that. There's a complexity at every single one of those layers along the way, whether it's the storage subsystem, the networking management, or all the way up to just the hypervisor itself. With Scale, we've really tried to abstract all of that complexity away from the end user. And while it can do a lot under the hood, like I said, we've hidden that. So really, as an end user, what you're doing is, if you decide, okay, I'm going to go with Scale Computing, you're going to order some nodes, minimum of 3 nodes, you're going to put IP addresses on those, you're going to hit cluster, you're going to walk over to your desk, and you're going to point your browser to any of the nodes in the cluster, and you can immediately start spinning up VMs. And every one of those VMs is going to be highly available. So okay. I'd say that at a high level, that is typically what I would say to a VMware administrator about mm-hmm. KVM.
Okay, so kind of like my Apple MacBook computer, it has a Linux-like operating system mm-hmm. underneath, but yet it's known for being one of the friendliest and most easy to use, computers available. So you guys have taken Linux and KVM and really made it easy, and in your case, you told me even easier than, let's say, setting up a vSphere cluster with vSphere high availability and all these other features. Yeah. Is that the case? Would you say setting up a 3-node Scale cluster is easier than setting up a 3-node vSphere cluster with HA?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, with all of the layers of complexity that you have mm-hmm. in order to maintain high availability in your environment, we've done studies that kind of go through and say, what kind of training would you actually have to go learn in order to administer, or basically implement and then maintain after the fact an environment like this. And every one of those layers has training involved with it. And it's not to say that training is hard, but it's time away from your everyday job. Mm-hmm. And it's also time spent on the kind of the plumbing to keep your highly available apps up and running. I would say that for a typical HC3 deployment, 3 to 8 nodes, somewhere in there, you could be up and running within a day. Most customers, in fact, we had one customer I just talked to last week, told me he had VMs running in 2 hours. And that's, that just speaks to the simplicity of the system.
Yeah, and the other area that the complexity is removed is because it's a hyper-converged infrastructure. So there's no need to buy a SAN, deploy a SAN, configure a SAN, and that's something that a lot of VMware, administrators, I think, stress over, is the storage. They're not familiar with it. They kind of had to put it in because they needed the shared storage, but it's not really something they want. And over time, they end up with, maybe storage I/O contention, and then it's more trouble in many cases than it's worth. So you guys have really eliminated that area of complexity.
Yeah, and for the customer that we target, typically, in a larger enterprise, and there are use cases for HC3 in an enterprise, but for a typical large enterprise, they've got a storage administrator. They've got the hypervisor expert in-house. For the IT generalist that kind of has to juggle it all, yeah, you're right. They're going to stress about the hypervisor, and if it's not that, it's the SAN or the NAS, and connecting all that up.
So some other common questions. Can KVM run Windows VMs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, any x86-based machine is going to be able to virtualize and run on KVM and hence on HC3.
Okay. And then you talked about high availability, and I heard you also mention replication. I mean, that's not something that I think many small shops have access to or can afford. At least in the past. Replication was something you buy two big $100,000 SANs and you enable replication. So tell me a little bit about your replication.
Sure, there are a few things to talk about. First is, that is one of the use cases that we see a lot. Probably the first use case is just the server consolidation. Right behind that is probably just disaster recovery. They want to have that second site and be able to use the replication abilities within HC3 to replicate the data from site A to site B. With some of the upcoming releases that we have on the horizon, what's nice is that you're going to be able to, on a VM by VM basis, say, I want to replicate this VM to this site, and every block-based change that happens over time, we're going to make sure is represented on that other site, to the point where if site A goes down, you can immediately go to site B, click Start VM, and it's immediately going to start. So that's kind of the use case around it. Now I guess the other part of that is kind of how it works, and again, it's what we've tried to do there is basically say what changes have occurred since the last time we've done the replication, and not change every block every single time, send that over the wire. We're just sending those changes over time. Okay.
So intelligent replication, and what about backup and recovery? What do you recommend?
Yeah, a lot of the customers that we have coming to us are coming from a physical environment, and typically what we recommend for a customer coming in from a physical environment is continue doing the same backup and recovery that you've always done. Basically, if you can back up the VM within the guest, that's probably your best option.
Okay, and then what about advanced virtualization, performance, and capacity, and analytics tools? Do they need those?
It's a good question. Typically, the advanced tool that they're going to use is our cluster is automatically going to alert you to the fact that, hey, you're running out of CPU, you're running out of memory, you're running out of storage. What do you need to do? You're going to add another node, right? So you're going to call us up and say, hey, I just got an alert that said that I'm running out of capacity. Oh, great. Let us ship you another node. You ship another node, put an IP address on it. We're going to aggregate all the resources of that node into the cluster. Seamless, easy to use, no downtime of the VMs, all that. So
very nice, very nice. So I really like that it's made for small and medium-sized businesses. It's affordable, but yet it provides advanced features, high availability, replication. No need to buy a SAN for the primary site or the disaster recovery site. So a great solution. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.